I find the founding of America fascinating and inspiring. And as someone who loves looking for patterns in the scriptures and in history, I wanted to share with you three things that are very intriguing, these intriguing patterns that come from the Book of Mormon that correspond specifically with the founding of the United States of America. So, two of them you might have already considered. It's pretty typical for Latter-day Saints to consider, but maybe not to this depth. But the first one that I'm going to share with you is often overlooked, which is why I want to share this with you first. In 3 Nephi chapter 3, verses 20 through 21, it says, "Now the people said unto Gidgiddoni, Pray unto the Lord, and let us go up upon the mountains and into the wilderness, that we may fall upon the robbers and destroy them in their own lands. But Gidgiddoni saith unto them, The Lord forbid, for if we should go up against them, the Lord would deliver them." But Gidgiddoni saith unto them, The Lord forbid, for if we should go up against them, the Lord would deliver us into their hands. Therefore, we will prepare ourselves in the center of our lands, and we will gather all our armies together, and we will not go against them. But we will wait till they shall come against us. Therefore, as the Lord liveth, if we do this, he will deliver them into our hands. That's interesting to consider. And that's written more explicitly, but that follows the same pattern that was happening in Alma in the war chapters. Because at any point, if the people who are under God's covenant become so unrighteous, even if they feel like they're justified, that they want to go out and just proactively just attack their enemies because they know that these guys are prepping for war, God would not uphold them. And that would be the wrong thing to do. As Gidgiddoni says, God forbid. But in that example in 3 Nephi there, they got themselves ready as best as possible, and then their enemies came to them. And you even see that in the war chapters as well, where their enemies would come upon them and they were merely defending themselves. They're not proactively trying to create a war of aggression, but merely trying to protect and defend what they have. You think about it, in those verses, the Nephites wanted God to bless and approve of them going out to hunt down their enemies, but it was not meant to be. Now, when the Nephites had become so corrupted later, Mormon described their terrible predicament of no longer having God on their side to preserve them. It says, quote, "Nevertheless, the strength of the Lord was not with us, yea, we were left to ourselves, that the Spirit of the Lord did not abide in us. Therefore we had become weak, like unto our brethren." That's Mormon chapter 2, verses 25 through 26. So, question is, how does this play out in the American Revolution? Is there a pattern here? Did they do it right? And did our founding fathers and colonists understand this? It's starting to feel a little bit coincidental, because the incident that we now call the shot heard around the world created a very similar scenario in which the colonists defended their rights and they refused to engage in battle unless the British initiated the attack. So I want to share with you a clip that comes from another video that I've made a long time ago that shares this exact story, so you can see it in detail. It is fascinating. Paul Revere's famous ride included a stop at Reverend Jonas Clark's house in Lexington to warn John Hancock and Samuel Adams. When Reverend Clark was asked if his congregation was ready, he replied, "I have trained them for this very hour." On April 19, 1775, it was Clark's congregation that formed the first Minutemen to boldly defy the British advance. In the morning hours, when the Redcoats appeared, the captain of their group, John Parker, said something incredible and unmissable: "Do not fire unless fired upon," indicating that they were not going to start the conflict. Then he added something quite prophetic. He said, "But if they mean to have war, let it begin here." Soon after, the shot heard around the world was fired, signaling the true beginning of the Revolutionary War. Isn't it incredible that the war literally began as a defensive one, and therefore one that the Lord would properly support? As we well know, in the Book of Mormon, we learn that this land, the land of America, was preserved to be a land of liberty, of freedom from bondage, that God brought people into this land to inhabit it for this blessing, such as the Jaredites and the Nephites, and eventually the European settlers in the American colonies. So as it says in 2 Nephi chapter 10, verses 9 through 10, "But behold, this land, saith God, shall be a land of thine inheritance, and the Gentiles shall be blessed upon the land." So he's looking ahead because he knows the Gentiles are coming, because he had that vision during the Tree of Life experience. "And this land shall be a land of liberty unto the Gentiles, and there shall be no kings upon the land." Think about that. There's not even supposed to be kings upon the land. And he predicted that there would be no kings upon the land. So ever since the early settlers came to America seeking refuge from religious persecution, they taught and believed that America was a land of liberty. This knowledge, it was clearly brought to their understanding by the Spirit of God. There's no other source. It had to have been the Spirit of God. And this idea continued and even grew in fervor, during the American Revolution. The idea that America was a land specifically given by God for the purpose of religious and civil liberty was a recurring theme from throughout the War for Independence. See, John Adams, he noted that during the Revolution, that the pulpits have thundered. That's what he said, the pulpits have thundered. And early colonial leaders and clergy, they consecrated the land to God. They literally took the time to pray and fast and to consecrate it. And they asserted that its prosperity and freedom were conditional upon the people's faithfulness. This theme was echoed in sermons and in public prayers, reinforcing the belief that God's favor and thus American freedom depended upon national righteousness. Many sermons warned that America was a land blessed by God for the purpose of freedom, and that failing to serve God could result in the loss of that freedom, or even in a defeat in the War for Independence. Also, it's interesting, in their sermons and writings, they often warned that America's liberty was contingent upon continued faithfulness to God. Think about that. Where are they getting inspired by these ideas? See, ministers, they cited biblical examples to argue that nations which turned away from God lost their freedom and prosperity, and they applied this lesson directly to the American context. I mean, clearly the Spirit's inspiring them, right? So that's not surprising to learn. Many times the Lord tells us in the Book of Mormon that we must either serve and worship Christ, who is the God of this land, or be swept off. As it says in Ether, chapter 2, verse 8 and 12, "Whoso should possess this land of promise from that time henceforth and forever should serve him, the true and only God, or they should be swept off when the fullness of his wrath should come upon them. Behold, this is a choice land, and whatsoever nation shall possess it shall be free from bondage." I love how it's going to be free. He says they shall be free from bondage and from captivity and from all other nations under heaven, if they will but serve the God of the land, who is Jesus Christ. So I want to say, if you ever encounter sardonic, ungrateful expressions for America, for this country, the land of the free and home of the brave, perhaps you could abstain from engaging in such attitudes, because despite the flaws and errors of people, America was founded upon the God-inspired notion that this would be a land of liberty where the people can be free from bondage and oppression if they just serve Jesus Christ, just like the Book of Mormon states. The American Revolution also seems to start in the fashion approved by the Book of Mormon because of the stance of defense against tyranny from Britain, rather than an aggressive war, to actively remove Britain from their shore. Think about that. When they declared independence, They weren't saying, now go out and start burning all the British ships you can find and round up all those troops and kick them out. They were telling Britain, we shall become independent from you. We now declare ourselves independent. We're going to live our lives. And Britain made the decision, even before the Declaration of Independence happened, but especially once that was delivered to them. Britain went all in and said, no, you're not. You're ours, and you're going to do what we tell you to do. And the Americans were just trying to say, hey, we have rights, and we want to live by those rights, and we now want to be free from you since you will not respect those rights. And if you know anything about the stories from the American Revolution, if you know anything about how these miracles that took place, it's so obvious, like you can't ignore it. God's hand was constantly in there, saving them and allowing them to survive and then ultimately win the war. And if you want to see some content about that, about the stories regarding them getting help from God to win the war, tell me in the comment section below. I'll happily give you some videos on that. Let's give thanks to God for this blessed nation, the nation whereon, if we serve Him, He will preserve us. The nation that paved the way for the restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ and the restoration of Christ's church. So thank you so much for listening. I had to get this message out there. I had to get it off my chest because it matters a lot to me. This is a blessed land. Let me know in the comment section below other signs and patterns from the scriptures that you see that are taking place in America, good or bad. I'd love to hear about those. Thank you for listening, and share this, please, with a friend of yours. If you find this of value at all, share it, because we have much to be grateful for. And if you're watching this around the time of Independence Day, let me say, Happy Independence Day, and God bless America.